The Questions Log, Week 24. What does it take to form a Justice League? Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman have been missing for 6 months, but the team has survived their absence before. Just ask Blue Beetle. I guess you can't ask Blue Beetle. Ask Booster Gold. Okay, ask Martian Manhunter. Actually, where is Martian Manhunter? Let me get back to you on that one. This is 52 Pickup. Welcome for the 24th time to 52 Pickup, a podcast about the greatest comic you've never heard of. I'm professional comic book expert Alex Jaffe, and I am joined once again, and aftermath subscribership willing, shall I always be, by our nation's foremost good opinion haver, Gita Jackson.
Hi, I'm Gita.
Hi, Gita.
I'm just Gita. That's all. You always give me such a lofty introduction. I just woke up from like a 4-hour nap.
Well, you see, Gita, I do that because one time I didn't give you an introduction. You got mad at me.
What? Oh, well,
yeah.
because I didn't know when I was supposed to talk. Like that was that's what that was about.
Is like, that what that is?
Am I supposed to talk now?
I thought you were like, I thought you were like, you don't celebrate me enough, Jaffe. We you don't appreciate the fact that I'm here. So I'm trying to verbally convey what it means to me to have you on this show.
Well, I'm Gita. That's all.
Hi, Gita.
Hi.
Let's do a podcast together, shall we?
Let's do it.
Okay, it's not just us in the studio today. We're also joined this week by one of the founders of stupid nonsense comedy podcasting. One of the greats who inspired me to get into the game myself with his work as co-host of Jordan Jesse Go. He's also the co-writer of the Eisner-nominated graphic novel Bubble, writer of the new graphic novel Youth Group, and probably the first person to ever say the phrase Firestorm the Nuclear Man on a podcast, Jordan Morris.
Hi, it's good to be here. Alex, you do a great intro. I can't imagine griping about a lovely intro like that.
I learned from the best. I learned from 12 years of listening to you guys.
Well, nice. It was a nice compliment. And yeah, lovely intro. My gosh, listen, I've been on a podcast or two, and that was one of the finest intros I've ever received.
That's a mind-blowing compliment today.
It just feels incomplete without theme music, you know? Like, I feel like we could ramp it up a little, pyrotechnics, a little bit of that.
You got to play it in your head. What's your walk-on music, Gita? What are you playing in your head when you walk onto a podcast?
It's obviously 360 by Charlie XCX.
Sure.
There could not be a clearer answer in my mind right now.
You are the brat after which Brett Summer was named.
Yes.
Jordan, what's your podcast walk-on music? Now batting.
Oh, gotta be Baby Elephant Walk.
No, that's mine.
Oh, is it?
It got stolen. You weren't quick enough on the draw.
Seriously? Have you seriously used that joke before?
Oh, literally on the last podcast we recorded.
We were just recording a bonus episode.
We're just recording a bonus episode where I was insisting the only song I listen to is Baby Elephant Walk.
It's so for folks that maybe don't know off the dome, the song we're talking about is
the Dancing Homer song.
Oh yeah, you're right. Yeah, I mean,
All
I
right.
guess in my mind, it like sets expectations in a way that I like. Were I to come on to Baby Elephant Walk, people aren't expecting a explosive, high energy performance. They're just expecting some cute goofing around and
silly little guy.
Yeah,
just here comes a silly little guy. Exactly.
You know what you're getting here.
And then if I happen to bring, an intelligent observation, some energy, some sex appeal, it's a nice surprise because you weren't expecting it.
Now, here's the thing about 52 as a comic. 52 is the comic about the weird little guys. It's about I don't care about Batman. I want to know about the other guys in Batman's world who, don't get to be on the page because Batman's always around. I want to know more about Booster Gold. I want to know more about Firestorm. So, how did you become involved in, how did you become aware of, these third, fourth string DC characters who you're occasionally making references to in other projects?
Yeah, I'll mention on our podcast, Jordan Jesse Go. We do have, we try and out reference each other. We're two pop culture saturated white guys. So naturally, we are going to try and out obscure each other with our pop culture references. And yeah, I've always been I've been a DC reader for, since I was a kid, and I love the deep bench. You love all those weird wacko characters. And yeah, just for whatever reason, whenever I need to pull an obscure comic book character, I always go to Booster Gold. And that's kind of even like baked into Booster Gold a little bit. It's kind of the joke about him is he's a the consummate D-lister, the guy who's he's not Batman, he's not Superman, but he's he's charming, kind of makes up for his lack of superpowers with charm,
dignity, charm, good PR for himself.
I think
good PR. Yeah, he's a PR minded superhero, and I think that's a lot of fun.
I think he's a very relatable character for anyone who's tried to work in the entertainment industry and just been a little bit vain. Just enough vain that you think you're not getting your due. Which is probably true if you work in the entertainment industry.
Right.
Part of the appeal of Booster Gold is his sweatiness. It's the fact that he's not Superman, but in his head, he is.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. He's the Katy Perry of superheroes.
Yeah.
Current day Katy Perry, not height of a teenage dream era Katy Perry.
2024 Katy Perry.
Yes.
Working with disgraced video producers, Katy Perry.
That's her skeets.
That's her skeets.
Dr. Luke is her skeets. I'm sorry, it's true. It's leading her down a dark path because he has evil powers.
And very, very fitting for this issue we're going to talk about eventually, because we have an evil Skeets, right? Evil Skeets is kind of the big bad.
That reveal, I'm very excited for that. I love his look as evil Skeets.
Me too.
Really convincing him made this little pebble-sized robot, like an evil pebble robot. Yeah. It's really great.
We're skipping right into talking talent here, but this issue is guest drawn by the great Phil Jimenez, one of the foremost Wonder Woman artists, protege of George Perez, with Andy Lanning on art. Phil Jimenez and Andy Lanning previously worked on Greg Rucka's Wonder Woman run, so he's very familiar with this particular team. And he also worked on Infinite Crisis, which 52 is ostensibly the sequel to. Is this your first time reading 52, Jordan, or were you reading it back in 2006?
It is, yeah. So I was aware of it, and I think it has stuck in my mind because I feel like every time I browse the comics section of a public library, they have every collected edition of 52. And yeah, it was just like an event that I missed. I don't know what I was up to in 2006 or what I was reading, but I don't think I was
Civil
reading
War at the time. That might have been it.
Oh, you know what? I was reading Civil War.
Yeah.
And not that there's not room in one's life for two event comics, but I think I maybe was a little more Marvel-y at this time. And yeah, it's always something I'm curious about. I've always kind of known that the premise is like, what if the big three left? And yeah, obviously, lousy with talent. This event.
Yeah, the sky is dark because all the stars are here.
Of course. So yeah, I've always wanted to check it out, and I always think to myself, maybe I'll just grab all of these from the public library one day and just take it down in a weekend. But
do it.
I haven't done that yet. Maybe I will now. This issue was a lot of fun.
Yeah, we picked a hell of an issue to jump you in. Keith Giffen, who you may be familiar with from Justice League International and the like, kind of the quintessential Booster Gold stories. He does the breakdowns for every single issue of 52, and he's been very involved in the background of this whole series. And I think this might be the Keith Giffeniest ass issue of 52 in the entire series.
Yes. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a whole sequence that, to me, as a person who was introduced to Booster Gold through the Countdown to Final Crisis stuff, where I had to retroactively learn why I should be really upset that this character is going through so much emotional pain. You can see it's just it's for people like me who are literally, why did I learn about these two characters that seem like so much fun after both of their lives has collapsed and they're no longer having wacky hijinks?
Right. It's like, hey, remember what we just did with Ralph and Sue Divney? Let's do it again. Yeah, so we've got this we've got this cover image of a bunch of weirdos of superheroes literally nobody cares about, pointing at the screen, posing like a Justice League, because that's Giffen's bread and butter. Back in 1987, he and J.M. DeMatteis were tapped to do a Justice League run, but they weren't allowed to use any of the A-listers. They're like, well, let's just make the run about that. So we've got Super Chief, who we met a couple weeks ago. We got Firestorm, but not even the Firestorm people know. It's the new Firestorm because the old one died. We got Bulleteer, which we're going to get really into. Bulleteer is, as you know, Gita, from Morrison's Seven Soldier series.
You know, something I noticed in this issue, I don't think she talks a single time, which I think is really
That's
funny.
true and 100% intentional. We will get into that. This issue was the cause of one of the biggest fights behind the scenes of the entire run. And we got Ambush Bug here because Keith Giffen promised at a convention at some point that Ambush Bug would appear somewhere in the series, and this is the issue where they make good. You familiar with the Ambush Bug, Jordan?
I was not. So I will admit, I think you introduced me as like the guy who makes the deep cut DC references. I haven't heard of 75% of the characters in this thing, I will admit.
No,
and
you're talking to like a living encyclopedia of DC like comic book knowledge.
Yeah.
So fair enough. It's like you can be number 2 just because the GOAT is so high up.
Oh, right. I'm number 2. I got schooled by Mark Waid. Let's not forget that.
You did literally get schooled by Mark Waid. We had him on the pod. And
There's no shame in that. Jaffe. He's Mark fucking Waid. But yeah, for a little bit of an explanation, Ambush Bug is kind of, I guess you would call him Deadpool before Deadpool. He was Keith Giffen's author avatar. He was like a guy who breaks the fourth wall, talks directly to the camera, except that's kind of his whole deal. He doesn't have a secondary deal to that where he's like also a mercenary. He's just a weirdo who Keith Giffen created to complain about the editors. His name itself is a reference to Forbush Man, who is kind of an avatar that Stan Lee created back in the day to kind of blame his creative woes on. So that's Keith just transposing that concept here into a character on the page. Bulleteer is Bullet Girl from the Fawcett Comics backup features to Captain Marvel in the Golden Age, who Grant Morrison resurrected for their Seven Soldier series. That's Firehawk in the background, who is Firestorm's love interest in those old Gary Conway Firestorm comics. Super Chief, I don't blame you for not knowing. He literally showed up for the first time a couple issues ago.
Yeah, and then we went through this in the previous when we talked about it, but like this is a revival of a character that was popular at the time of cowboy and Indian movies. Like that's like the cut that they're doing. This is a comic book designed to make Alex Jaffe go yippee.
Yeah, back in the 50s, superhero comics were back on the rise because of the Silver Age happening. And DC's kind of bread and butter at the time, which was cowboy comics, were falling out of favor. So like, what if we introduced a Western superhero? And that's kind of where Super Chief comes from. But the concept was dropped after 3 issues. So that's everybody on this cover. Sorry to Wikipedia at you.
No worries. That's why we have done this podcast. We can't stop doing this at each other.
Yeah.
But this is also the issue where it happens, right? Like everybody's here. They're all here.
The entire premise of our guest episodes is just so I get to be autistic at people I admire. That's fair.
No, I appreciate it. I kind of like after I read the issue, I wondered, I'm like, how much like research should I do? Because like I did not read this event. After I read it, I'm like, okay, I do not know who most of these people are. But I just decided, you know what? I'm gonna
just go with it.
I bet I'll get schooled at some point. And I'm appreciating all this great information.
We haven't even cracked the cover and we're already there. The thing about this is that like when I was reading 52 back in 2006, I didn't know who all these guys were either. And that's what broke my brain about comics. It's like, I need to know what everybody's deal here is. Like, the thing I get asked the most about comics is, what is the ideal starting point? And there is none. You just kind of have to jump into it and figure it out as you go. And then 10 years later, you'll go back to that comic you were clueless about and go, oh, that's what was going on. And maybe you get like 60% more of it.
Yeah, I think when I was a kid, and I think this is how a lot of people read comics as a kid, of like you just pick up a cover because it looks cool, right?
Right.
Like, I think, and I got a lot of my first comics in like the grocery store. So like I couldn't dig through back issues. It was like maybe they had last month's there, but it was essentially just like a rack of comics near the magazines, and like they had a little smattering of stuff from the big two. And so, yeah, that's where I got a lot of my first comics. And it wasn't like I was just grabbing one because, again, like, oh, Wolverine is on this. He's fighting a robot. I will have that. And then you find yourself like, just like waist deep in a story that had been going on for 10 issues. And you either had to like go to the comic book store and look for those back issues, or you just had to figure it out. Or
vibe
like
your way through.
Put those, yeah, exactly, yeah. Put the pieces together yourself, and like now, when I start something, I really like want to start at the beginning so I get it all. But like I was thinking the other day, there's something to reading comics like that, and maybe that's how I should just do it again. Of like, this looks cool. I won't worry that it's the first issue. I will pick it up. I will read.
Random one, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know. There's something fun about that.
I went to the comic book store and did that this weekend just to give myself a little bit of a break. I'm always worried about picking up a quote unquote bad series. And I don't know why I'm worried about that. One issue of a comic that is like not as good as I want it to be is truly not that big of a deal. Sure. So I went around and I looked at all the comics and I was like, I like this character. This cover looks cool. There's a new Jaffe Lemire comic that came out that had a holographic cover, and I got the last one. So fuck it, right?
Yeah.
The art will look really cool even if I don't end up reading this whole thing. And that's beautiful art in my home for the privilege of paying like $4. Like, easy decision to make.
Back in 2014, I had a friend of mine who knew things about coding get into the back end of Comixology and make me a random comic generator.
That's so cool.
So that I could just hit a button and like I would read whatever came up. And that's how I got through a ton of comics about 10 years ago. And it just does a great job of simulating that picked up a book from your neighbor's long box feeling.
Yeah.
It's something I've personally been kind of trying to get DC to do with their Infinite service, like a random comic button. So far, nobody's listened to me, but I swear it would be good. I swear people would love it.
Why don't we put Jaffe in charge of DC Comics?
Why don't we? I don't know.
I think he'd do a pretty good job.
I think I would. I think I'd do okay. I think I wouldn't do the best, but I also wouldn't do the worst.
Yes. No.
Really cut down on those Batman comics and really just boost the profile of E.S. Pete.
Yeah.
a guy who we meet.
More E.S. Pete. Every time E.S. Pete's not on screen.
Pete.
Where's E.S. Pete?
He died back on the way to his home planet.
Thank you for getting us back on track. We got this Chiron at the bottom of this first page, setting up some of the stories we're going to see. We're checking in on Martian Manhunter, a character who was a major part of the Justice League in almost every incarnation of the Justice League, but has been AWOL for half a year that this has been going on. We're ostensibly checking in with that Oliver Queen mayor story that's been going on in the 1 year later storyline that 52 is supposed to answer for. Like, kind of the running thing with 52 is that the reason it was greenlit, its purpose was to explain all of the weird shit that happened in the 1 year later event, which was this time jump after Infinite Crisis where everything was different. And this missing year of comics would explain how all that came about, except the creative team was absolutely not interested in doing that and decided to do their own story about these weirdos who weren't involved instead. But every so often they throw a little storyline to the editors, like, yeah, we're working on it. And that's kind of what the Oliver Queen story is doing here. And the very exciting and unproblematic return of the Great 10. I know we were all looking forward to that.
Everybody was looking forward to more 2006 era geopolitics writing.
Yeah.
Yeah, like
Grant Morrison's great ideas of what a Chinese superhero team would look like.
Oh my god! Oh boy! At least it's brief, but
yeah,
it
could be worse.
We'll get there when we get there, right?
Yeah.
There were characters in this I was really excited to get to know more about. Not them. I was like, okay, maybe they can. Yeah, that's all right. I kind of get what this was. Okay.
Yeah, no, it's interesting to see like 20 years ago Bush era politics like comics as politics happening, where a bunch of writers are trying really hard to do something that would become increasingly more popular over time, which is like try to inject these books with reactions to real world events that are occurring all around us, except that it's Grant Morrison doing like ayahuasca in a like castle in Scotland, and he's not like, they're not like maybe the person that I would want to do this sensitively.
Yeah. Yes, probably not the creative teams you would pick now to do a story about Chinese superheroes.
Not quite.
No, not really.
No, we had a really nice conversation with Jinlun Yang about that. If for subscribers to Aftermath, you'll be able to listen to that in the archives. We open with a cameo by actual comic book writer Elliot S. Maggin, who's working for Green Arrow here for some reason. Elliot Maggin wrote some really groundbreaking Bronze Age Superman comics back in the day. But he has a cameo here for doing a kind of funny series about Green Arrow at the same time. Feels like the kind of thing Giffen or someone else would, or one of the other weirdos on this team would throw in. But he's basically shanghaied into being Oliver Queen's campaign manager here. And he just tells him, you know what I'd say, just use the word fat cats a lot. And I thought it was really
I like
funny.
that gag. That's a very like, that's a very, I don't know if Keith Giffen did that gag, but it seems very Keith Giffen.
It's very Giffen-y, yeah.
I also love the word fat cats. I love the idea of this is a man in 2006 that still talks like a 1970s
Yeah,
guy.
like he's like his arch nemesis is Boss Tweed.
Yeah, that was old timey in 2006.
Yeah.
I'm bringing it back. We're bringing it back now. Everyone you don't like is a fat cat.
It was retro in 1941.
Yes.
People want to hear about lower tariffs.
Yeah. I'm taking down Hooverville.
We need to talk about fire axes in the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory.
But yeah, Green Arrow needs to step away from this political campaign because he's being paged by Firestorm to restart the Justice League after it disbanded at the end of Infinite Crisis. But the only people Firestorm has been able to recruit to this are heroes literally not even Jordan Morris has heard of before. Which is when we get our title drop, Just Imagine, which I guess is a reference to the Justice League, but could also be some kind of reference to Stan Lee's Just Imagine. Do you remember when Stan Lee wrote a bunch of DC comics?
Oh, yes, I do remember. That was very weird.
Yeah.
What he did was like he reimagined all of the classic DC characters to have to be written the Marvel way, essentially. And I don't remember any of the details on it, but I do remember he radically changed everything, and everyone was a lot more angsty, which just seems impossible. But
from what I understand, what happened was his co-creator on each of these comics had a phone call with him, and then he got top billing for what they actually put out. But, that's kind of how Stan Lee works.
That is literally exactly how Stan Lee works. I was trying to maybe think of a counterfactual example. No, he loves doing that. That's like the number thing he loved to do.
So everybody here in this room full of nobodies is arguing about what they're supposed to be or represent as the Justice League. Bulleteer gets one line, and I'll reveal it here. It's because Grant Morrison was really pissed they used Bulleteer for this. Apparently, there was some kind of behind-the-scenes miscommunication where Keith Giffen thought that he had permission to use one of their Seven Soldiers heroes for this because, Morrison's one of us writers. We should do something that acknowledges their work. It's kind of a no-brainer. But Morrison was concerned that it would get in the way of the story they were trying to tell with that character. And by the time she was drawn into the comic, it was too late to change. So they just kind of ended up reducing her role to basically nothing, and she never appears again after this issue.
Spoilers for Seven Soldiers of Victory, which I have read several times. She's the perfect character to have in this configuration because her whole story is about how she ends up becoming like a cheesecake superhero by accident because her husband gets like addicted to superhero porn. This is really the plot of the comic. And Yeah. Okay. Let me back up a little bit.
I'm learning so much. This sounds very Grant Morrison-y, by the way. Okay.
It's all like a meta story about comic book cheesecake. Basically, her husband gets addicted to superhero porn, and he's trying to turn himself super, but he accidentally like overdoses on the super chrome metal, whatever, and she gets covered in it, and she but is really sexy. But she kind of doesn't really want to be a hero. But now there's really nothing else she can do now that she's literally just covered in chrome and really sexy. So she goes to all these third-rate superhero conventions trying to get into the business. And then also eventually there meets what becomes her nemesis, the super porn star that her husband was obsessed with. It's maybe the weakest of the maybe not. No, it is the weakest of the Seven Soldiers books. But there's no reason, Bulleteer is also the least important in Seven Soldiers. It
Sounds
is
great.
Totally, I mean, it's a great the first issue is so good because it's all about this woman learning a horrible secret about her husband, really great drama. And then the moment of her realizing the depth of the betrayal is fantastic, but it doesn't quite thread the needle on the stuff that they were trying to say about sexiness in comics. Sure. It kind of ends up just doing the thing a lot, which is unfortunate. But I was happy to see her show up here because this is exactly where Bulleteer would show up.
So you're saying Keith Giffen understands Morrison's comics more than Morrison himself does?
I'm just saying sometimes you can get a little precious about your own creations and you don't need to.
That's gotta be it. They're too close to it.
Yeah.
I'm surprised that they didn't just go for it and name her Bombshell, right?
Mm-hmm. But it's got to be about referencing the original Seven Soldiers.
Yeah, Bullet Girl,
Yeah, exactly.
We get a very Mark Wadey sequence up next, I think, going up to day 2. It's Rhode Island, Happy Harbor, home of the Silver Age Justice League, where we finally check in on Martian Manhunter, who we have not addressed this entire year. He's kind of pummeling out some kind of elaborate tribute to all of the superheroes who have died as members of the Justice League. And I've taken notes on all of them if we want to be here for 2 hours, but if you like, we can skip it.
Well, I mean, let's see. There's Red Tornado, I see, and then, of course, Booster and Blue Beetle.
Oh, right. Booster believed dead at this time, having...
Yes.
Yeah,
having exploded, but without a body, we know what the fuck that means. So.
Yeah, has this guy never read a comic book before?
If you don't...
But I'm trying to figure out if there's anyone especially notable, but I know that you're just going to tell me who all of these are later also.
We got Rocket Red. We got Silver Sorceress. We got Tomorrow Woman, a fan favorite. We got Barry Allen, killed in Crisis on Infinite Earths. We got Queen Hippolyta, who took Wonder Woman's place as Wonder Woman a couple times. We got Aztec, the Ultimate Man, another Grant Morrison creation. We got Ice, who was killed in Justice League International, a story arc you can't read anymore because it was written by a pedophile. We've got General Glory, who had a heart attack. We got Sue Dibney, who died in Identity Crisis. We got Vibe. We got Citizen Steel. Both of them were very unpopular members of the Detroit-era Justice League team. We've got Amazing Man, who was killed in a Starman issue. We've got Yaz, kind of an annoying little mascot character from the aforementioned Pedophiles Justice League run. And we've got the Crimson Fox sisters, Constance and Vivian Diaramis in the foreground. That's everybody in this scene. But what's kind of more interesting is this plot that gets introduced in 3 panels here.
Yes.
That Martian Manhunter has been impersonating government officials to change how international politics works.
It's just the way they introduce it so casually. It's I created a fake identity as a civil servant, and I literally changed laws. And I call that justice. I'm Martian Manhunter.
Kind of the opposite of Superman's entire approach to shepherding humanity, I guess, where he's just taking this direct role, which you would think would tie into a really interesting story, but the writer who picks up Martian Manhunter after 52 does absolutely nothing with it, taking it in a completely different direction. That's just how comics go sometimes. Were you ever really disappointed about a comic book story that you were invested in that just kind of collapsed?
Oh, let me think. I mean, yes. I'm struggling to think of one, but absolutely, I think that's something that we all as comic book readers realize. Yeah, let me think. I can't think of one off the dome, but I absolutely know what you're talking about.
It's definitely something that, like, everyone who's reading an ongoing series and suddenly a new creative team comes on, or the book isn't selling well, so it's canceled and we don't see them again for 15 years.
Yeah. For me, I read as much of Shade the Changing Man as I could humanly stand. Peter Mulligan's Vertigo book. Starts out so good, and then at a certain point, he gets super invested in a little romance he wrote for Chade with a brand new character after he's already married. Like, Chade has already married the love of their life, and that character has died. And like, it gets to the point where like Chade has a heart that is telling him not to do this thing, and he literally takes his own heart out and locks it in a box. And I remember being so frustrated by that move that I just was like, I'm never reading another issue of this ever again. How dare you?
On the other podcast I do, Frank Cifaldi recently asked me, why didn't they collect any of the Shade the Changing Man after volume 3? And like, he was clearly really into it, so I couldn't tell him the obvious answer, because it's bad.
Because it got really bad. Unfortunately, it became bad. He started having bad ideas.
Yeah. But this Martian Manhunter stuff is building on stuff that John Ostrander established in his 1998 Martian Manhunter series, one of my all-time favorite superhero comics, where Martian Manhunter has all these different identities that he has established around the world. He has this like Japanese giant robot superhero alter ego. He's got a bumbling supervillain henchman alter ego. He's also like a cat named Tommaso who belongs to an old Italian lady. That's my favorite one. But yeah, it's just like, what if all of these weird identities that he established to figure out what the human experience is like actually had to do something? And it's something you could really build a whole run out of, but all we get is these 3 panels. And then we go to China. Here we are in China.
So previous to this, I am like, okay, I have to admit, the stuff they're trying to do politically here is both so simplistic and so convoluted in how they explain it with the Legion of Evil. It's basically the Axis of Evil, but they're superheroes, right? Like, that's what we're doing here.
Yeah. It's George Bush's new Axis of Evil that he tried to reboot back in 2004.
He tried to do a sequel to the Desert Storm event, and it didn't work out the same way as he intended. But yeah, it's America has political enemies, and they also have like people that have their interests at heart. Like, it makes total sense that China would have a superhero program and that countries in the Middle East would also have superheroes. That is something that comic books have approached from concurrent to this, there's also the Ultimates going on that Marvel run, where Captain America confronts a terrorist Captain America, basically, is like the way that storyline goes. Yeah. And I remember reading it at the time and thinking it was so like boundary pushing and revolutionary. And then you read it as like after we've lived through the war on terror and everything related to that. And you're like, this is like the same level of racism that we've kind of always done about the Middle East. Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, there's like a level of commentary that I think like happens in all media, but I think happens a lot in comics where like the comment is pretty fucked up, huh? And it's like, yeah. And what
Think
do we
about it.
Huh? Like, that's pretty fucked up.
Yeah, wouldn't it be fucking crazy if this happened? What would you be doing? That'd be so crazy.
Yeah. And when you are like 12, it blows your mind, right? You're like, that is fucked up. Oh my God. And then, yes, when you go back to it as an adult, I'm like, what is this saying? Like, this is just saying that like fucked up things exist, you know?
Yeah.
I don't know how familiar you are with Arrow, if either of you watched the TV show Arrow.
Oh, I've never watched
a little bit Arrow.
I watched them Arrow. I don't know how much by like percentage of every episode of Arrow I could absorb because I was laughing too hard. Yeah.
There is a later episode.
But those abs, woo, hubba,
boy,
right?
I know. They're all so beautiful. And I have to say, props to Arrow. It's the only time an Arab actor has portrayed Ra's al Ghul, which feels like a gimme. Okay. Yeah, it's Alexander Siddig, who is so fucking great. He does exactly what you want, which is just over the top vamp bullshit, because it's an absolutely crazy character. But
there is some cool Lazarus Pit stuff in that show. It's mostly very silly, but I wanted to point out there is a run of episodes that the plot line is that Oliver Queen is the mayor of Star City now, as he was in the comics for the time. And they try to do a serious episode about gun violence, where they try to show both sides of the issue.
Oh, like pro killing children?
And at the end, there's this resolution that like Oliver Queen's like, I passed legislation that everyone agrees on. You never get to hear what that was.
I love that. But he did do it.
But he did it.
God, that rocks.
I did the thing that you, the viewer, would have wanted me to do.
Exactly. What do
Whatever
you
side
think
of this
I
you're
did?
on.
That was it. That's what I did. I can't believe you guessed it. Wow.
Write us a letter to P.O. Box 224, Arrow, Michigan.
God,
I think
that.
I think in this scene, this is where the Chinese superheroes kind of like have a little showdown with Black Adam and his family, right?
Yeah.
Am I getting this scene right?
That's right.
Yeah.
I had no idea that they did a Black Adam family thing. And I'm like, oh my God, what a fucking great idea. It's so,
Yes.
I'm like, yeah, and this more than anything in the book made me want to read the whole thing. I'm like, oh my God, they did a Black Adam family story? That's awesome.
Yeah.
And they seem cool. Again, these are whoever he was married to and whoever his kid was. I had no idea who they were.
First of all,
but
his wife's name is Isis.
You know?
yes, sure, yeah.
Yeah.
And then
I noticed that.
And Osiris. Some of the build up to this is not great, but I think to me, this character writing between Black Adam and his wife really sell any scene they're both in.
Yeah.
Because the chemistry is palpable and you see what they give each other, right?
Mhm.
Like he's pretty ruthless. And so she gets to feel really powerful, but also she's a good person where Black Adam is ready to rip some guy in half basically any living moment of the day. You can see exactly why The Rock had his brain broken
by this comic specifically.
Exact portrayal of Black Adam. He would never recover.
This is the comic that made The Rock want to play Black Adam back in 2007. But yeah, this scene, to give a little bit of context, earlier in this series, Black Adam was the one who was getting all of these superheroes from non-American countries to team up together to what Adriana, who is now ISIS, was fearing would be some kind of global terrorist network. So now Black Adam is showing up saying, hey guys, I got married and my wife says we can't do this anymore. And they're pissed about it.
We can't play anymore, you guys. Sorry. It's my wife wants me to spend time with her brother and everything. So we can't go to the bar on Tuesdays. Yeah. They're pissed about it, and it feels again like they keep doing this thing where they're like, we're doing politics. And then they just like do what a child imagines politics is, which is like having a meeting and being like, we're going to do evil things or we're not going to do evil things anymore. They talk a bit about airspace and stuff, which I remember was a conversation at in this era of the War on Terror. But they don't seem to have like a real understanding that these countries are discrete countries that have a legitimate claim to not want to have super people who can just like fire lasers out of their eyes, crossing their borders all willy-nilly. Like that's a very reasonable demand.
Oh, Lord. Yeah.
But I do love, like, they just fly away in a plateau and they're like, yippee! Like they're so happy to be done with this axis of evil bullshit.
Yeah. Now I can go play.
Exactly.
That takes us back to the action centerpiece of this issue, going back to our cover stars, the Justice League, who appear in this issue and never again to become answers to trivia questions where I'm like, technically Ambush Bug was on the Justice League. This is his entire tenure. They stop arguing with each other for literally 1 minute to fight a bunch of pirates and robots that show up attacking a crowd inexplicably. Ambush Bug
does this ever get explained, or is this just like they live in a comic book world, so this shit happens?
It does get explained, actually. It's in this very issue. We'll see later. I'll bring it up when it comes up. It's not explicit, but the main villain of this issue is a character with time powers. So they're kind of expecting you to put those dots together.
Yep, I just put that together myself. I was about to say it's my favorite thing that Morrison does in Seven Soldiers is in the Frankenstein book, where Frankenstein is tasked with going to Mars. And someone's like, Frankenstein, how are you going to go to Mars? And then you turn the page and he's on Mars and the caption just says, all of the day's work for Frankenstein.
That's all you got to do, yeah.
That's all you got to do. Sometimes comic books can be comic books. It does fucking rule. The Frankenstein book is one of the best of the Seven Soldiers books.
Oh, man. I got to read these. Okay, man. My TBR pile's getting huge.
Oh yeah, that's our guarantee. Anytime we get a guest on this show, they walk away with a reading list that blocks their heads.
I mean, I personally buy comics after Jaffe tells me about them on this podcast. Also, I'll just open another window and buy a bunch of shit on Comixology while he's talking to me.
I know. I'm googling Seven Soldiers anyway.
They're here to fight these pirates and cyborgs, and they're trying to get them under control. And then a signature Keith Giffen-ass scene of a bunch of weirdo bad superheroes who have never shown up before. It's maybe the best scene in one of the best scenes in the entire series.
What I love about this also is they all have really well thought out names and designs, like gimmicks you can very clearly and cleanly absorb. And also you're never going to see a single one of these characters ever fucking again. Like you're just not. Like someone sat down and drew all these outfits from 360 degrees. And you're just not going to see them again. It's a high effort joke. I really like that.
So yeah, something I gathered is that this is the result of a storyline where Lex Luthor is just giving randos superpowers.
Mm-hmm.
So these are just like unequipped randos in Metropolis who now have superpowers.
Exactly.
Yeah, he's basically also like turning his superhero team into like Bravo celebrities. Like it's like Real Housewives of the superhero team, et cetera, where he is engineering all their encounters reality TV with, But it is like leading to mass chaos where everyone is a superhero, but also it's like if everybody in Manhattan had a gun. Like that would not go good for anyone.
We got Gladiator Giant. We've got Dynamole, the Crimson Ghost, Fireface, Jack of all trades, Pole Dancer, Lorraine Newman, Lady Liberty. Yeah, so it's
musical guests, ESP.
I love the Tornado Ninja, which is a ninja on the top half. And then there's just a tornado on where his legs should be. It's so good. I also love the dig at the Chinese superheroes with immortal bald man in armor.
Yeah, it's very much. It feels like Keith making fun of Morrison here. Yeah, but I think this is all kind of a callback. Like Keith's breakthrough comic in DC was The Legion of Substitute Heroes, which was this one shot about all of the teenagers who weren't cool enough to make the Legion of Superheroes. So he's been kind of working with these losers since he started at DC. So this feels like the latest part of that. But they're just getting in the way, making a big mess. And Phil Jimenez's new upgraded sexy evil design for Skeets shows up here. And he's like, well, here we go. Now it's time to kill everybody.
So Skeets has gone from looking like a smooth, beautiful football to an angular, evil football.
Yeah.
And he's got little footballs that he uses to shoot laser beams out of. And he just starts doing it willy-nilly to basically everyone in the vicinity. It's pretty great. It's pretty fun.
Like, he doesn't explicitly say that he's trying to create a ruckus to attract Supernova, but it's pretty clear that's what he's doing. Supernova is the mysterious superhero who we don't know the identity of, who keeps showing up in 52.
Okay. So it doesn't matter that I didn't know who it was. I was like on the same page as the reader at the time.
Exactly.
Right. I won't spoil it here because you're going to read 52 in the future.
I might do it. I mean, I think I'm just going to go to the library and grab them all.
It's a good time, man. I mean, you don't have to, but it's great. I wouldn't be doing a podcast about it if I didn't love it.
No, this issue, I think, is if we're going to slide you in the middle and like you haven't read it before, this is a pretty good one for you.
Yeah, this is a pretty good in media res thing.
It's like, it's indicative of how much of a joy it is to read because these writers love comic books and they love the minutia of comic books. They love DC history. They want to show off how much they know. A lot of the issues are just this kind of fun to bounce along with because you don't know what's going to happen, and also you don't know what weird deep cut they're going to legitimize.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, there's just the little concepts that I'm getting whiffs of here are so great. Like Black Adam family, evil Skeets, Green Arrow is the mayor. Just like those are such great pitches, you know?
Yes.
And just like seeing little bits of those stories makes me want to see what the whole thing was.
Yeah, this is the comic that made me fall in love with DC as a universe, as opposed to the thing where that publishes Batman and Superman.
Yeah, you mentioned early on in the pod that Jordan, that whenever you try to think of like deep cut characters in DC, you go to Booster, but also just DC just has such a wealth of deep cut characters.
Yeah,
because it's just I love telling people about Matter Eater Lad, and I know that's like a meme to like DC fans, but I love being like, yeah, there is a guy in like a major circulated comic book whose power was just he could fucking eat anything.
Well, you called him a guy. He's a lad. I don't mean to correct you, but he's a lad.
He's a lad. Okay, excuse me, mea culpa. But he never graduated to being a guy.
I mean, you can argue Marvel DC till the cows come home, but I think that the thing DC has on Marvel is like the deep bench is so much fun at DC. It's way more fun than the deep bench at Marvel. Like, all these weirdos, and it comes with like, having your Grant Morrisons there. And I think Grant Morrison gave us some weird X-Men, right? Glob Herman and Shark Girl and things like that.
We've talked about how X-Men is the DCest thing in Marvel because it kind of exists.
Yeah,
on
no
its own.
kidding. But I mean, these weirdos are so great.
Because you get weirdos you need to also retranslate into modern culture. Like Super Chief is a great example here. In the age of the Western being like the superhero movie of its day, having a comic book about a Super Chief is like actually a really reasonable thing to do. And of course, in the like 40s and 50s, of course you'd have a white person write that. Like wasn't anyone else available?
You didn't know any non-white people.
Yeah, exactly. They definitely know all about that. No, but now, you get to see some of these concepts interpreted and then reinterpreted. And then, I mean, Shade is also another great example where there's another Vertigo run on that, where instead of being an adult man changeling alien, he's a teenage girl. And Shade is going through the trials and tribulations of a CW teenage drama at the same time as all the psychedelia is going on. And it's fun to see people pay homage to the things that inspired them, I guess, in their writing.
Right. We get that one of the many casualties of this massacre is Super Chief, the character who we got this dramatic intro to just 2 weeks ago, who was being built up to be this major hero.
Took up over half the book. Like, actually 100%. I was kind of pissed when he died. So I was like, you didn't make me learn so much about this guy for him
just
to die right
kill
now.
Him off.
Yeah, but he did. That's exactly what happened.
And we get a little sneak peek at the Ralph Dibny story, where he's been going through heaven and hell to try and figure out what happened with his wife and what's going on with the 10th Age of Magic or whatever. One of the weirder, but not the weirdest 52 storylines, but just kind of reminding us on this last page that they remember that's still happening. Oh, we get a couple more pages. We get the Checkmate is getting set up again, which is setting up Greg Rucka's comic that he's doing at the same time as 52.
It's curious that they say it's named as a UN agency, as if the UN has any authority over anything at all.
Oh, one of the major differences, I guess, between the DC universe and our universe is that the UN does stuff over there.
They don't just kind of have meetings that people don't pay much attention to.
They don't just go, shame on you, shame.
I did look into this Checkmate thing a little bit, and I'm like, oh, this is kind of like the big bad of another storyline, Checkmate, say. And I like in this one issue, it's like, Checkmate is over. And then a couple pages later, it's like, Checkmate is back. It seems like something you would do like in 10 years, right? Someone is like, why don't we bring back Checkmate? And then it's in this one issue, it gets absolved and then brought back.
Page 1, we're killing Checkmate. Page 20, hey, you know who I miss?
What's kind of cool? This Checkmate program.
Whatever happened to those guys?
Well, still, him and his art has been so good, but I love the sort of pained expression on the deep cover government official that Martian Manhunter is playing here in this, where he's just like, It's like there's a wordless upset on his face.
Yeah.
He's like,
great.
oh no, all my work that I've done the past 6 months.
Yeah, he's been in deep cover for so long, and it gets undone without any like input from him in like 45 seconds.
And we get a little bit of a teaser checking in on old Amanda Waller, who we also haven't seen around in a while. She is not missing a step as Checkmate is getting set up. She's getting the Suicide Squad back together. And Black Adam's old buddy Atom Smasher is in charge. So that's the teaser we get with a little cute little preview of Ambush Bug as some of our leads who are going to be featured in the next issue. We get this little teaser of Ambush Bug as it's the question and as Isis and as Batwoman, which I thought was very cute. Just like, well, there's your cameo. That's what you asked for. You got it. And God damn it, he delivered. Keith Giffen made a promise and he kept it. He didn't have to keep it. There wasn't really a role for Ambush Bug in this book, but he did it anyway because that's what people wanted. God bless him. And that takes us to our backup. One of the coolest things about 52 is that every issue after the first 10 or so ends with this amazing 2-page sequence, all of them written by Mark Waid, which tells you everything you need to know about the most important and the most obscure characters in DC. And this week we get Booster Gold. And every time they bring on an incredible artist who's important to that character. This week it's Dan Jerkins, who created Booster Gold. He was the writer and artist of the original Booster Gold series. And Mark condenses everything you need to know about him into 2 pages. And it's fantastic.
It really is like just marvelous. Especially, I like the panel transition, the page transition where they're talking about how big of a football star he was, and then the very next panel is him dejected with the caption until he got caught betting on his own games. Buddy, come on.
Yeah, there's a jumbotron with his face on it and the word "banned" over it, like it's Days of Future Past or whatever, or Age of whatever. I'm not a Marvel guy. You know what I'm talking about.
Yes, I do know what you're talking about, and it's okay.
Thank you. You got my reference.
You got it right. You got it right. Days of Future Past.
Thank you, Jordan. Thank you.
I read those again too. You can just read those again, and they're just as good as the first time you read them. What's a crazy thing about Claremont is like he really was the GOAT. He really did have it. To me, this is such a good idea of a character because I don't know if this was one of your like pandemic obsessions, but I got really into scams and scammers. And I love that Booster Gold is just someone he's learning how to be a hero because he tried to pull a grift. And it's the heroing is working out better than the grift. Yeah.
How were you aware of Booster Gold, Jordan? Did you read the JLIs? Was it from the cartoon?
Yeah, probably JLI. I think so. I think that's probably it. And then just like him popping into Justice League stuff. After that.
Yeah, the JLI stuff really is, even with the context that everything would go sour and like they would canonize this group falling apart in a really violent way. It's still so funny. And I love when a comic book is funny. Yeah. It really is.
Me too. And it is, I reread those JLIs recently. They're still funny. They're still like, it is aged remarkably well, and obviously like some politics stuff and, et cetera that like hasn't. But like, as far as just like, are these jokes still funny? Yeah, they pretty much are. And self-awareness is at a really lovely level. It's not it's not like so soaked in self-awareness that you feel like that's the point of the book, but like you just get these little jokes about comic books and comic book storylines that are really fun and funny. And those are some of the best comics, I think.
What I think makes JLI work is that there's really an impulse with a lot of these superhero teams to lean into the idea like, we're really a found family when you get down to it. We're all brothers and sisters here. And like, that's never been the Justice League's deal. They've always basically been like co-workers who show up when there's a crisis to do a job. And
in fact, it's like emotionally poignant when they demonstrate that they do care about each other outside of the job, because they naturally, inherently kind of distrust each other, but know that they have to work with each other.
The comedy of JLI is leaning into that. It's like, well, maybe these people don't really like each other. Maybe they kind of barely tolerate each other and are all here for their own reason.
I just like all the bits where it's like Booster and Blue Beetle playing pranks. other characters.
Yeah.
That panel of them just going, run away, lives rent-free in my head.
Oh, yeah.
I really like that one.
I think we'll talk about that in a bit more, actually. But I think that takes us to the end of the issue here. Let's talk about favorite scenes. What was your favorite part of this issue, Gita?
My favorite part of this issue, God, I think it is the plateau of just all the useless characters emerging.
Oh, yeah, that's it.
It's just a delight.
Hard to beat.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I just begin thinking about what a comic book about each one of those would be. And you just notice a lot more weird details the more you go into it, like Ninja Tornado Ninja, where his legs are just a tornado. Or God, Lady Liberty, who's just like a 1970s pastiche. I think is very funny. E.S. Pete, want to know everything about that guy. What's he doing? I like to think he's like a hedge fund guy that thought he'd get superpowers just to like, just to be cool to his buddies on the weekends in the Cape. But it is not only is the like, does the comedy turn to drama because it becomes like this, like it's a useful bit, right? Where the absurdity of the scene leads you to like really immediately understand how easily and how dangerous it would be for everybody to be able to do superhero stuff all at once. But it's just like they embrace how silly it is. And it makes me very happy to see silly things in comic books.
I want to ask you, who would be the writer and artist behind the Pole Dancer miniseries?
Okay, artist Babs.
Babs
Tar?
Yeah.
Babs Tar. Yes, absolutely. She'd kill it. She could fucking write the thing too. I think she'd do great.
Yeah, I think we just pitched a Babs Tar comic is what we did right now.
I'd love to see the Pole Dancer as a comic. Some of the coolest people in the world are sex workers, truly. And anyone who has to deal with the clientele they deal with and also basically run a small business on their own on the side earns my complete respect. Running a business is very hard.
Basically, I want to see someone do Stan Lee's Stripperella, but seriously this time.
Yeah, with a lighter touch. Have you guys read any comics by Leah Williams?
Oh, I've heard of her. I don't think I've actually read her stuff, though.
I've read some of her Power Girl.
Oh, yeah. So she just did, in the world of DC, she did the Gotham City Sirens. It's a little 4-issue miniseries. Yeah. It's great. And for Marvel, she did Exterminators, taking these kind of like, four deeper cut X-Men and just sending them on a little adventure. She is so funny. Like I read a couple of the Power Girls and I think it is good, but a little more down the middle. But like Gotham City Sirens and Exterminators are some of the funniest comics I have read, like, in a long time. And yeah, I think and definitely has a like fun yet sex positive attitude towards filth. Like there's a real fun positive filthiness in her books. Anyway, that's my call for the writer of the Pole Dancer.
Yeah. I know there's a whole bit in Sirens where Punchline is a hot tub streamer.
That's a fun little detail.
That's really good. Oh, yeah. I love that. That's something that they would do.
I knew that would get you on board. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Fuck. I just realized I just bought some comics with Williams on the cover when I was at the comic book store buying comics, but I didn't know anything about. So I'm very excited for that too.
New favorite.
Yes, I also was thinking about, was that comic book called Empowered? That was kind of a smutty Amerimanga thing. It wasn't, the idea was this character gets more powerful the more her costume gets destroyed. And she's very self-conscious about it. So it's like she's embarrassed like while it's happening to her. I really liked that comic when it was out. I don't know how well it's aged, but I remember thinking it was very funny. And also like the character, they treated her like a full person. So it wasn't just an excuse to get a woman naked, essentially.
Not just that.
Yeah, it was that plus some other stuff.
Yeah. Jordan, same favorite scene?
I mean, hard to beat. That's really terrific, really funny, and yeah, again, you want a whole miniseries about each of those weirdos, and then just some of those little storylines that this hinted at were so much fun. I can't wait to read more.
That's a good impetus for us to go to the Blackboard. The Blackboard is our segment where we talk about something this issue reminded us of, or something you want to know more about. Questions this raised. Did anything stand out to you, Gita?
I mean, you wrote down the thing that stood out to me, but we'll talk about that in a minute.
Yeah.
For me, this is like such a Blackboard heavy issue in that there's so many different minutiae of the DC universe that you're just thrown at your face with no explanation. So I think I just want to talk about the Legion, right?
Yeah.
I care about the Legion of Superheroes and I don't know why.
You care about them because they're so opaque. They're so impenetrable. They're this entire other world that, like, they're literally separated from the rest of the DC universe by 1,000 years. So it's okay to not know anything about them, but they're still just there, just out of reach. Have you ever experimented with the Legion, Jordan? They're hard to get into.
I haven't. No, yeah, that's a little zone that I know not that much about.
And you could go the rest of your life never learning anything about them, and it would not impact you in any way at all.
Yeah, I would say I know more about the Legion of Superheroes than 99% of people, but that's basically nothing to someone who actually knows anything about the Legion of Superheroes.
Yeah, I tried to read some Legion of Superheroes thing kind of recently because I think there was a writer on it that I liked. Maybe it was Bendis. Maybe Bendis tried to reboot it.
Yeah, to mixed success.
Yeah, and big old Bendis fan over here, and I think his DC stuff is great. But that particular thing did not grab me.
It's a quagmire, right? Like if you don't, it is in itself its own little mini comic book universe with like there's multiple different reboots of everything. It's like trying to get someone into JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. Like I think it's at that level of impenetrability.
No. Every page of Bendis' Legion is 30 characters you have never met before talking to each other at once in the middle of a storyline you don't know anything about because he just made it up.
But the Legion is where we get Matter Eater Lad, right?
It is where we get Matter Eater.
Is where we get Matter Eater Lad. It is to me also like this beautiful pit of bizarre weirdos that are just like some of the versions of the Legion are just pure soap opera drama, like love triangle bullshit. And I love that stuff. Some of them, there's like evil twins and shit, like really, really wild stuff that they don't do in other versions of the comics. Brainiac is a good guy, you know, like all this weird
Brainiac's
stuff.
Is Brainiac's son part of the Legion?
Yeah,
right?
Brainiac 5.
Anyway.
It's Brainiac 5, yeah, and he's full of angst because he doesn't want to be evil. Like, it's like very much, it feels like an anime to me. I think that's why I like it.
Okay, so I'll tell you why Booster Gold has a Legion of Superhero ring, and believe it or not, the answer involves Ronald Reagan.
What? Sorry, really wasn't expecting that.
Yeah. The number one question I get about Booster, as the guy who professionally answers questions about DC Comics, is, wait, if Booster's from the 25th century and the Legion's from the 30th century, how does he have a Legion ring? We get an answer for that in Dan Jurgens' original Booster Gold run, where he goes back in time to the late 20th century to try to make a name for himself. And a contingency of the Legion of Superheroes happens to be there for unrelated reasons at the same time. Brainiac 5 is part of that. And Booster first gets national attention when he saves Ronald Reagan's life. If not for Booster, Ronald Reagan would be dead.
But why did he do that?
In the comics, this is regarded as a good thing he did. In fact, Brainiac 5 is so impressed that he makes sure to save a Legion ring so that it's around in the museum in the 25th century for Booster to steal in the 25th century.
Brainiac would think that, wouldn't he?
Brainiac would be a Reaganomics guy.
That's a Guy Gardner move.
Yeah.
Loving Reagan, right?
Yeah.
I think Brainiac 5 doesn't understand humanity. He's like, surely people would share the wealth of their own volition.
Obviously, it will trickle down.
Yeah. Yes, that would be logical.
It is sort of like, I once believed that American society functioned because everyone followed the rules. And now I learned that frequently people just get away with a ton of shit that they shouldn't.
Yeah.
It's a little bit like, you know, being a young neurodivergent child and encountering that people don't pay attention to the signs that say, please bust your own tray. Like, what? But you're supposed to, there's a sign.
Yeah. But what about the sign? Anything stand up for you? I mean, you mentioned the Black Marvel family, Black Adam's family.
Yeah. Very stoked to know more about that. You know, I would love to. I'm excited to learn more about Green Arrow's run for mayor. That's a ton of fun.
That's fun.
Yeah. I like the idea of him running for mayor just for like, okay, so here's a little backstory on me. I'm the only person in the world whose father got radicalized even further to the left by YouTube videos. So he started out like former like hippie, you know, like his favorite class in college was anarchist thought. You know, he was already pretty far, but during the pandemic he retired. and then I had to push him back from sort of tanky viewpoints a little bit.
Boy.
So it's sort of like imagining my dad running for mayor. You know,
That's funny.
or it's like at a certain point, there's going to be a comically large cane to pull him off stage where he starts talking about the deep state. Like, it's going to be bad.
All right. With that, I think let's go to our mailbag. It's time for answering the questions. This is the part where we answer the things that you want us to talk about. Your burning questions about 52 or comics or whatever you want us to yammer about. You can do that by writing into 52mailbag@gmail.com. Our first question comes from Tom, who says, "Hello, I love the podcast, and I love that I get equal parts inside baseball and art appreciation. I especially have enjoyed the subscriber-only episodes, and I would enthusiastically listen to y'all interviewing comic creators, talking about events and editorial decisions that happened in the last few decades. I would happily throw my money at a podcast where you interview DC writers and artists on the regular, if only to hear what shakes out of the conversation run by a comics historian and a professional journalist. Well, keep on subscribing to Aftermath, and we'll make more of that happen. Anyway, my questions. I was rereading some of the 2006 stuff, and I came across this page from issue 0 of JLA, where Batman mentions that he would hide Oliver Queen's arrows as a prank. Are there any other instances of Batman pranking other heroes? Are there other heroes known for pranks in the JLA? Have we been missing out on a story of an escalating JLA prank war? I gotta know. Thanks and best wishes." Now, you already got into this a little bit with Booster and Ted. Does anything in particular stand out to you, or is it just kind of that they're gremlins in general?
Yeah, I'm trying to think. Are there any other? I don't know if I can remember any DC pranks. Nothing really stands out. I think that Superman probably has the ability to prank, right? A good-natured prank where nobody feels bad at the end.
You could argue Superman spent 50 years pranking Lois Lane.
You know what? Yes.
You know
what is a secret identity? What is a secret identity but a prank you live in?
That's a bit you're really committing to. When you have a secret identity.
Yeah.
It's like, that wasn't me. That was Superman.
And you know he's getting off on it because he's constantly winking at the camera about it. It's not a safety thing. He's like enjoying this. It's like, I don't know, Lois, just lucky, I guess. Wink.
Okay, if you fell in love with the most beautiful, ruthless reporter on Earth, and for some reason she believed all your lies about not being Superman because you're so hot, wouldn't you also, just for a couple minutes, gloat about that?
Of course, of course. Speaking of Bendis, my favorite thing Bendis did during his tenure at DC was hire Matt Fraction to write Jimmy Olsen. That 12-issue Fraction Lieber Olsen run is incredible. Mm-hmm. And there's a chunk of that where, in order to generate page views for the Daily Planet, Jimmy Olsen goes to Gotham City and instigates a prank war with Batman. And it just goes to some incredible levels. Batman ends up having the last word by legally changing his name to Jim Finney.
That's really funny. That's a really good joke. I also just remembered Tim Drake's introduction as Robin, as a character in the Batman comics, is by him pranking Batman.
Yeah.
He hacks into the Batcave, and his little hacker name is Das Boot.
Cute.
Yeah, I remember that.
I am vaguely remembering a Superman thing where he thinks there's something going wrong at the Fortress of Solitude, and he shows up, and it's like a surprise party for him. That's kind of a positive prank, but you know, prank.
I mean, I think Clark also would be easy to get, right? Like, he's so...
Oh, sure, yeah.
Yeah. So it would be ridiculously easy to prank him because he would never think that anyone nice to him would do something even slightly untoward.
All right. We got one more question this week. This is from Michael. It says, "Hi, Alex and Gita and Jordan. Wow, how did they know you were on this episode? Thank you for making such a wonderful and funny podcast."
This must be from ES Pete.
I eagerly look forward to every episode. My question, we're 2 years away from the 20th anniversary of 52. Hypothetically, DC Comics has to make an anniversary project. If you were tapped to be some of the co-writers on the new project, which weird little freak are each of you picking as your main character? Bonus points, your Glup Shido cannot have been a lead in the original 52.
I just have to Google the name of someone really quick.
Okay.
We were talking about the Legion, and one of the things that's most frustrating about the Legion is that there are a bunch of really cool heroes that are just trapped in this bullshit universe, never to escape. And if there's any one of them that I would love to escape, It's not Saturn Girl, but there's this one who has this incredible fucking costume that's like just a weird stripe of stars. That might be Saturn Girl in a different one, but the female character
Girl?
It might be Dream Girl. She's just a goth. She's basically like a
Oh, Shadow Lass.
Yes. Shadow Lass, she's a weird, moody goth, and I always like it when a weird, moody goth shows up to be weird and moody about things and to learn about the power of friendship or whatever. So just let some of the Legion characters escape is like my thing. Allow them to interact with characters of the present day. Stop siloing it off, and then maybe more people will read and care about the Legion.
Do you have a favorite weird, super obscure character, Jordan?
I mean, I kind of loved, we didn't talk about him a lot. I loved Black Adam's kid. I thought Black Adam's kid was
Osiris.
a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He has a good time over here.
Sure. I mean, I like that kind of, kid having fun with superpowers vibe. Because, if you were a kid and you had superpowers, you would have a lot of fun, probably.
Well, the good news is nothing bad ever happens to him.
Nothing bad. No, don't worry about it.
Yeah, don't worry about it. I'm not worried about it. I'm not worried about any of it.
Yeah.
which Spider-Man girlfriend I've always loved? Gwen Stacy.
Yeah.
Nothing bad ever
I
happens
think Gwen
to that.
Stacy should be
Gwen
one of the
Stacy.
next major 52 characters.
It's one of my favorite Robins is that kid Jason.
Yeah, Jason Todd.
Oh, he's the best.
What a cute little kid.
Yeah, it's got some problems, but you know what? I think that he and Bruce can really turn it around.
Yeah.
He's going to be all right. He's going to be
okay. Yeah, my weird little freak I'm obsessed with, since I can't say the question because I'm obsessed with the question partially because of this comic, I'm going to go with Lady Shiva. Lady Shiva is the character that right-thinking individuals consider the greatest martial artist in the DC universe. Some people will be like, oh, what about so-and-so? They're wrong. But yeah, this is a character who Denny O'Neil created to be the character who humbles other characters, that will always beat Batman in a fight. That is just like, you think you know everything there is to know about this thing, but there are worlds you haven't considered. And I'd love to see more of a comic from her perspective that that gives a little bit more depth into Lady Shiva's life. I think she's overdue for it. She's been around.
I'd love to hear the story of her mentorship, right? Of like who mentored her, right? As she becomes mentor to basically every other DC hero.
Exactly. Yeah. Basically, her deal is that she teaches you to be good enough at martial arts to the point that she feels good about beating you. It's like,
oh, this is kind of boring for me otherwise.
Yeah, I gotta teach you to the point where where I can have some fun when I kill you, is basically her deal.
Yeah.
I'd like to see more with her. But yeah, I think that brings us to the end of the episode. Jordan, you recently put out a comic yourself called Youth Group. You want to tell our listeners a little bit about that?
Oh my God, I would love to. Thank you for asking. Youth Group, it is from me and artist Bowen McCurdy. You might know Bowen's work from a great series called Spectre Inspectors, and has done a little work over there at Marvel Comics. And our book Youth Group is a YA horror comedy about teenage exorcists. So these are kids. It is set in the 90s. They are part of a goofy Bible study group that sings parody songs and, makes abstinence charts. But twist, they have to actually do exorcisms and fight demons. So Buffy the Vampire Slayer vibes, Shaun of the Dead vibes. It's a little spooky. There's a lot of jokes in it. Hopefully it is one of those funny comics that I think we all like so much. And it was a total blast to do.
Hell yeah, that sounds like a real blast to read.
I went to an Orthodox Jewish summer camp as a kid, as I'm sure your husband probably did, Gita.
Oh yeah, he did. Camp Ramah.
Oh, baby. I went to Camp Yesharim. Writing color war spoofs of 2,000-year-old Hebrew hymns.
Yep.
That was my summer. So I can definitely relate. I wish I was doing something as cool as exorcising demons, but really I was LARPing episodes of Dragon Ball Z. That's what I was doing.
Yeah. I think this comic fun for any reader, but I think if you were part of any kind of young person's religious group, there will be some special cringe in there for you.
Yeah.
So.
No,
I can't wait.
Where in the town that I grew up in, there was like a local music scene, but all of the venues were at like Christian youth groups basically. So
Yep.
The Christian hardcore era was very active when I was growing up. So the one funny story I have is I went to this Christian youth group for a hardcore show, and there was a non-Christian band playing, and they kept getting their mic cut off for swearing, and they were being really rowdy about it. And then one time he started unbuttoning his shirt, and underneath it was another shirt that he wrote on in Sharpie 666 I heart Satan, and then the show ended.
Oh wow.
Everyone call your mom to come pick you up.
Exactly.
Yeah, that literally would have. Oh my god.
It's very funny. Yeah, so I'm definitely going to pick up your book. I can't wait to read it.
Thank you. Yeah.
Another thing of Jordan's I would like to shout out is I have personally been really enjoying your new podcast, Free with Ads.
Thank you.
There's just a glut of movie podcasts out there, but I feel like when you're doing a movie podcast, either do one about really good movies or really bad movies, or just like one kind of movie in particular. But the premise of this show is that you'll watch anything that is just on a free streaming service that has ads. So one week you'll do The Godfather, and the next week you'll do Cool World, and it's my favorite thing.
This is such a brilliant idea for a podcast, because my husband and I encounter really, really good movies on these streaming services, some that are free with ads that are rendered unwatchable because of the frequency of the ads, the programmatic ads that are put into them. It radically changes a film. We were watching Billy Lynn's Long Halftime Walk as an experiment.
Okay.
And it's just like ads every 20 minutes. So Kristen Stewart,
in the middle of a scene.
So this halftime walk is very long because
it's like 3 to 4 hours long.
Yeah. That is a full-time
walk. This halftime walk. Oh boy. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, this is a podcast I do with the great comic Emily Fleming and Matt Lieb. We all kind of know each other over there from Good Mythical Morning. And yeah, this was Emily's idea. And we watch it all as long as it's free and as long as you have a loud DraftKings ad interrupt the action. We will watch it. As long as Kevin Hart yells about DraftKings every 15 minutes.
That's what you want from a movie.
It is.
God.
All right. Gita, I've got one more question for you.
Sure. Yeah, hit me.
This episode. Are you ready?
No, I'm not. And I'm scared.
Have you ever been ready?
No! Stop asking! You ask me every time and it's scary! 52 Pickup is an Aftermath production created by Gita Jackson and Alex Jaffe and edited by Esper Quim with original music by John Ahrens. The views and opinions expressed on this show are solely those of the show's personalities and do not reflect those of DC Entertainment or Warner Brothers. Please rate and review our show wherever you can and send your questions and comments to 52mailbag@gmail.com. Never stop reading comics.